we all have different energetic properties ourselves. And so it's critically important from Ayurvedic perspective to match your diet, your botanicals, your lifestyle, everything with your individual body type. And so as an example, I'm a Vata body type, and Vata body types are made up of two of the elements, which is space and air. And so I'm lacking water, earth, and fire. And so everything that I try to consume has water, earth, and fire in it, and it helps to bring balance in my body. And so Ayurveda really is it's a medicine of opposites. So if you're too hot, then you actually introduce cold into the body. If you're too dry, then you introduce something that's oleating or oily into the body. It's very commonsensical. It really works really well for most people.
Welcome to the Woman's Doctor podcast, helping empower women to embrace their body and soul's full potential. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, and after 22 years of working with patients, I found the answers to our health struggles are much deeper than most people realize. To help explore this, I'm interviewing colleagues and other wellness experts to get to the root cause so women can realize their true beauty and be informed decision makers for themselves and their loved ones. Longevity is something we all want. Well, at least everyone listening to the Woman's Doctor podcast. So I asked today's expert to come on to talk about cellular aging and how we can slow it down so that we can age gracefully. My guest is Dr. Nick Bitz. He is a naturopathic physician that specializes in Ayurvedic medicine. He works in the natural products industry with a focus on anti-aging medicine, biohacking, herbology, nutrition, and dietary supplements. In today's podcast, we discuss longevity, cellular senescence, and natural medicine. Dr. Nick also shares about Ayurvedic medicine and how it can help our skin stay healthy and juicy as we age. This and much more on today's episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast. Nick, welcome. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, hi. Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and dive into longevity. All of us want to live longer. We also want to look good as we get older too. So a lot of scientists talk about hallmarks of aging. What do they mean by that?
Yeah, aging is a really well-studied area of medicine and science. Right now, we have what are called 9 hallmarks of aging. And these are really just kind of really classic characteristic aspects that all organisms show up with. So whether you're a mouse, you're a yeast, you're a fish, you're a human, we all have these 9 hallmarks. And that's really where we're putting a lot of our emphasis. So telomeres is one, DNA, mitochondrial dysfunctions, another. There's a new emerging field that I think is incredibly exciting, which is called cellular senescence.
Okay. So what is cellular senescence? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we've known about senescence since the 60s. There's this term called replicated senescence. We know that cells generally will replicate on average between 40 and 60 times, and then they die. So cells don't live forever. They have this endpoint, and that endpoint is really known as senescence. So senescence means aging. It's a state of aging. And when you talk about cellular senescence, you're talking about cells and that process where these cells age. Typically, cells will go through their life cycle. They go through at the very end what's called cell program death. Very nerdy concept, but it's this idea of apoptosis. And if the body is able to get rid of things, they're able to regenerate cells, regenerate tissues. And that's how the body moves towards health. But as we age, there are a couple cells that tend to linger, and these are called senescent cells. And senescent cells basically end up lodging themselves into any number of tissues throughout the body. So they linger, they take up space in tissues, and then they secrete really harmful inflammatory chemicals, and they influence all the other cells and the other tissues that they're in. And so that has broad implications for aging. And so part of what we're seeing right now that's starting to emerge is what can we do about that? We know that as we age, people tend to accumulate these senescent cells. How do we get rid of them? Is it just a fact of life? And then in 2015, there was a study done by Scripps and the Mayo Institute and some other health organizations. They showed that there are certain compounds that can selectively target these aging cells and help the body eliminate. So it was profound. That was in 2015. They are putting a lot more science, a lot more attention into this area. And so it's not only a pharmaceutical area, we're definitely overlapping when you get into nutraceuticals, holistic health, dietary supplements. So there's a lot of overlap here. And these things are called Senolytics. And so Senolytics are really great because, again, they can selectively target those senescent cells and help the body get rid of them, which again have broad implications for aging.
Okay, great. So let's talk about some of those nutraceuticals. I'm sure people really want to know what those are.
Yeah, I mean, in 2015, there was a combination of dasatinib, which is an anti-cancer drug, and quercetin. And quercetin, we know, is ubiquitous in the diet. It's been used forever in dietary supplements. We both use it clinically. You can find it at pretty much any health food store. But this combination was really what showed all the potential of this field of Senolytics. So quercetin is really where it started. We are seeing a lot more research right now in the area of fisetin. Fisetin, again, is another flavonoid compound, much like quercetin, found in fruits and vegetables. But it's now potentially the most powerful Senolytic. Of course, we've all heard of turmeric. Turmeric has compounds that are Senolytic. Luteolin has compounds that are Senolytic. Milk thistle. So we've identified a number of them that are very powerful. And generally speaking, Senolytic compounds are very specific in terms of how they act. So they're not broad acting, getting rid of all of the senescent cells in the body. They tend to be very selective about the type of senescent cells that they target. So whether that would be skin, or whether that would be the visual system, or whether that would be the brain. And so it's thought that it's better to consume multiple Senolytics at once rather than just a single agent, just to make sure that you're giving the body the greatest chance of eliminating these senescent cells.
Okay, so are you saying that there are certain nutraceuticals are best for specific areas of the body, or is it that you're saying that you should just take them all so we cover everything?
Hey, if you can take them all, that would be wonderful. It gets quite expensive.
Right.
I think it pays to really focus on the key ones, and we've done a lot of research of gathering the research, and we've identified really 9 that we recommend. And so again, you can focus on just quercetin and do a big dose every day, but it's better to do multiple at once. The field of Senolytics is really interesting because it's not something you do every single day. What the science is showing is that this idea of a hit and run philosophy, where you're doing a really big dose over the course of maybe 1 or maybe 2 days, and then you give your body a break, because it takes time to reaccumulate, to regenerate those senescent cells in the body. And so a big one-time dose tends to work over the long term.
Okay. And are these done in tinctures, capsules, powders, teas? Like what are the best methods of getting these?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say food, but you're not going to find the quantities that you need from foods. I would say hands down, the best way to do it is through powders and capsules, because you need to get those big doses. So fisetin, as an example, needs to be at about 1,400 milligrams per daily dose. So that alone is equivalent to about 3 capsules just for that one ingredient.
Okay, great. And let's talk some more about, our brain is so important. It helps us with our memory, our cognition. It's certainly one of the things that we want to keep up on as we get older, because the last thing we want is to experience Alzheimer's or dementia or anything like that. And also our brain helps with our hormones and giving the feedback and keep us aging gracefully in so many different ways.
Yes. So brains are intimately important for health, obviously. They are a primary focus of my company, which is a Neuro Hacker Collective. Really super fascinating as it relates to cellular senescence. Neurons never turn over. And so there is some research showing that you can generate neurons if given the right input, but it seems to be very rare. And I think the amount that we can do that is fairly limited. But as it relates to senescence, we do know very strongly that the surrounding cells around neurons in the brain, the microglial cells, the astrocytes, the oligodendrocytes, the endothelial cells, all of those cells go through that falling off process, that apoptosis. And so they do have the potential to go through senescence and to linger in the brain and really just to wreak havoc. So they can be inflammatory and not do their job. And so they're really just taking up space. And so the thinking is, and again, we need more data in this area, but the thinking is that if you're doing senolytic compounds, it's going to cross the blood-brain barrier and it's going to impact these secondary cells that surround the neurons. So we do think that you can impact brain health through senolytics, but I think we need a little bit more research in that area for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, what about other lifestyle factors, things that you can do with diet and lifestyle behaviors that will help with senescent cells?
Yeah, I mean, so far we've identified a few ways that you can support the elimination of these senescent cells. Exercise would be number one. It's probably, again, only mildly senolytic, but we do have human studies that show that it does reduce those biomarkers of senescent cells. The second way would be a fasting mimicking diet. So a low-calorie diet over the course of days or weeks. Again, not a lot of data, but I think a lot of big minds that are in the anti-aging space, they're theorizing that a fasting mimicking diet can be beneficial. And then the third area would be just immune support in general. Of course, the immune system functions to scan the body, to look for these senescent cells and to eliminate them. So in theory, if you can improve immune function, immune intelligence, you're going to be able to lower your senescent cell load over time.
Okay, great. So what are some things that, like immune supportive things that you're referring to?
Yeah, where to even start, right? I think everybody's talked about this probably a bunch and thought about it given the course of events over the last 2 years. I certainly have some favorites that I like for building the immune system up. The first ingredient that I love absolutely is beta glucan. Lots of clinicals around this ingredient. It's found in, of course, fungi. It's also found in bacteria and the walls of cereals as well. Really great for just turning on the immune system. And so I equate beta glucan to almost coffee for the immune system. So whenever you need to just really wake up the immune system, beta glucan is one of the first ingredients that I would look to for sure. Of course, some of the basics, vitamin D, zinc. I am infatuated with black garlic. Really good research showing that it doesn't need to be the garlic that's you chop up for dinner that's really too lively and full of those sulfur compounds and not super palatable. But if you can make a black garlic or even get it in a pill, it works really well just to stimulate all phases of the immune response. Also, prebiotics, obviously probiotics, and this new category of postbiotics, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's as we get older, our immune system just doesn't tend to work as well. So it's really important to think about these things with longevity, with healthy aging, to build up resilience, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other ways that you help support people? You have ideas on helping build that resilience?
Yeah, I mean, resilience is an interesting concept. I love the idea of resilience because I think that it gives people enough buffer where they can be exposed to several insults, whether it's stress or environmental stress or chemical stress, and they can withstand it and often thrive during that as well. Of course, a lot of the basic things are the most important. When you're talking about sleep, that's critically important to building resilience. If you're not sleeping adequately, you can't maintain resilience in any significant kind of way. Cleaning up your diet, really getting into the energetics of food, making sure that you're matching up your body type with the type of foods that you're eating. Critically important. I think we're going to hear more about that during the next I'm going to say the next decade. I think personalization of diet is going to be absolutely critical. My background's in Ayurveda, so of course I'm always looking through the lens of energetics, whether it's botanicals, whether it's diet. It's really critically important to determining whether or not something is healthy or unhealthy for a person. I'm also a huge advocate of adaptogens. Plant adaptogens are a special kind of family or class of herbs that work really well. When you use them day in and day out, they tend to fortify the body's defenses overall and build resilience.
Yes, yeah. And so can you explain a little bit about Ayurvedic medicine, what it is and how to or when somebody would want to see an Ayurvedic practitioner?
Yeah, Ayurveda is, it's considered the first form of medicine in the world. It's been around for 5,000 years, probably longer. It's a very interesting form of medicine because it's not just a medicine. It really is more of it's kind of the science of living. It's really takes into account all aspects of life. It's really a fascinating, very practical form of medicine. Of course, it comes from India. We've modernized it quite a bit here in the US over the last couple decades. We're starting to see an influx of their foods, their botanicals, such as ashwagandha, which you now can find at pretty much any store in America. And the thing that I like about Ayurveda is that it is a medicine of energetics, as I've alluded to before. So it will break people into body types, whether you are a Vata, Pitta, Kapha. It looks at these different energetic properties, and then it matches the protocols to your specific body type. So it's very personalized, it's very energetic, it's very effective. I like it because it's super practical. It's things that you can do day in and day out. You can add these things into your daily regimen so that you get these benefits over time. It's not just here's a pill, we hope you get better. It really is, what can you do to influence all phases of your life so that you are a happier, healthier?
Well, okay. Len, you want to just start with what is Ayurvedic medicine?
So Ayurvedic medicine is considered the first form of medicine. It's been around for at least 5,000 years. It comes from two words, Ayu and Veda, which means the science of life. So it's much broader than just medicine. It really is the wisdom that we've accrued over time that tells us how to live and be healthy and live better and ultimately gain spiritual enlightenment. And this form of medicine comes from India. It's considered the sister science of yoga. It's very practical in the recommendations that are made for individuals. It's very natural using, diet, lifestyle, botanicals to give therapeutic benefit. And the thing that I like most about it is that it's energetic. And so they really have done a really good job of defining energetic properties of everything, of the foods that are in our diet, the botanicals that we're consuming, these environmental inputs that we're getting. They all have an energetic property and they influence the body. And we all have different energetic properties ourselves. And so it's critically important from Ayurvedic perspective to match your diet, your botanicals, your lifestyle, everything with your individual body type. And so as an example, I'm a Vata body type, and Vata body types are made up of two of the elements, which is space and air. And so I'm lacking water, earth, and fire. And so everything that I try to consume has water, earth, and fire in it, and it helps to bring balance in my body. And so Ayurveda really is it's a medicine of opposites. So if you're too hot, then you actually introduce cold into the body. If you're too dry, then you introduce something that's oleating or oily into the body. It's very commonsensical. It really works really well for most people. But the key is to really make sure that you partner up and work with somebody who understands the ins and outs of Ayurvedic medicine, because it is really grounded in a deep pool of wisdom, and you need to come from that space and that really core understanding in order to be really good in terms of prescriptions and making recommendations for others.
Right. And it's also an important part of longevity, and it helps with anti-aging. I mean, I don't like calling anti-aging. That's a common term people use. Healthy aging, graceful aging. And so if, you're working with someone to help with that, they may even give some of these herbs that you have mentioned, some of these things that are helpful for longevity, right?
Yeah, again, Ayurveda is vast. And one of the main branches of Ayurveda is this kind of group of therapies called rasayanas. And it's all about rejuvenation, which is in essence anti-aging. And so I really like how Ayurveda approaches healthy aging from a rejuvenation standpoint. And Rasayana is really, it's super fascinating. It literally means the path of juice. And so the whole idea then is to nourish, restore, balance, stimulate the juices or the moisture inside the body. And so from an Ayurvedic perspective, the thinking is that we all start out as these juicy, water-filled grapes. And over the time, over years, we slowly lose that water element and we become these shriveled raisins. And so these Rasayana, rejuvenative, anti-aging therapies in Ayurveda, they're all focused on restoring that juice, that water element, so that you become more of a grape again.
I like that idea. I want to be a grape again, just like I was when I was born. Yeah, I mean, and you think about skin and how skin changes over time. It's a good kind of a picture of that. Like as we get older, our skin's not as plump and juicy so unless we give a lot of support to our bodies, both internally and externally, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that I love from Ayurvedic tradition as it relates to skin is a therapy called Abhyanga. Very foreign, very Sanskrit sounding, but in short, it's just a daily self-massage. And so in order to prevent a lot of the decay and problems that we see with aging in skin is to make sure that you're oleating, you're adding oil on a daily basis and using the right oils. So not every oil is appropriate for your specific skin type. So Vatas tend to have dry, rough, itchy skin, very thin skin. And so they have to use certain oils. Pittas tend to have inflammation on the skin, whereas Kaphas tend to be, generally speaking, the most beautiful, but they tend to have a lot of water retention. And so you need to do oils that have the opposite energetic properties. But I like that. I like that idea of doing a daily self oil massage and just to really care for the body in that way, much like we do a piece of leather, right? If you put a piece of leather outside in the elements, whether it's raining or snowing or windy, over time, it's just going to dry out. But if you keep adding oil to it, it's going to stay in really good condition for a very long time. And so I think that's the idea, to create youthfulness in skin, according to Ayurveda.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I grew up riding horses. So I remember that I had like lots of leather, lots of saddles and bridles to take good care of so that, they didn't get too much wear and tear. Last thing you want is a rein to break or a girth to break because the leather is rotted. Yeah. So we want to take good care of our skin too. And of course, our skin is an outer reflection of our aging process. And so that it all ties in together. Well, Nick, it has been so interesting talking with you today. Tell everyone where they can learn more about you.
Yeah. So, I'm not on social media. With that said, I work for a company that I love called Neuro Hacker Collective. Neurohacker.com is where we have all of our information, our products. So you can find me there, whether it's writing, whether it's creating products that are there. We work in the areas of nootropics and brain health, as well as longevity and healthy aging.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nick.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast, be sure to share it with the women in your life and rate and review the show. And to learn all about balancing your hormones, join us for the Hormones, Health, and Harmony 9-part documentary series at hormoneseries.com.